The alarm tore through Bagram Airfield Command Center at 0347 hours. Every screen erupted red. On the main tactical display, 267 crimson dots pulsed in a tight cluster, each one a Navy SEAL trapped in the Kunar Valley, Afghanistan. 8 enemy positions ringed the mountains above them, pouring fire downward like rain through a sieve. No exit routes, no air support. The timer in the corner read 12 minutes until complete enemy overrun. "Who's ready to fly?" Colonel Arthur Kingsley's voice cracked across the room. 40 military personnel packed into the operations center stood frozen. The silence stretched like wire about to snap. Major Flynn Bradley, 15 years flying F-15 Eagles, 180 combat hours, shook his head slowly. "Zero visibility, mountain terrain, no ground support. This is a suicide run, sir." Captain Blake Anderson nodded, arms crossed tight. "I've got a wife and 2 kids waiting for me. I'm requesting permission to decline." A soft female voice cut through from the back corner. "I'll take the mission, sir." Every head turned. Lieutenant Amber Hayes stood near the coffee station, holding a tray with steam rising from 8 cups. 27 years old, 5'3", barely 115 pounds, soaking wet. Her flight suit hung loose on her frame like borrowed clothes, blonde hair pulled back in a regulation bun. Her personnel file read, "Trainee pilot, F-16 to F-35 transition, no combat experience." Laughter rippled through the room like a wave. "You're serious?" Lieutenant Ivy Fletcher's voice dripped with mockery. "You don't even know how to activate the targeting system properly." Major Bradley smirked, turning to his wingman. "Call me when she finishes learning how to pour coffee without spilling." But Amber didn't argue. She set the tray down with deliberate precision, each cup aligned perfectly. She walked toward the tactical display, her movements economical, measured. Her eyes locked onto the coordinates displayed on screen. Her lips moved silently, calculating. 8 positions, range 3.7 kilometers, elevation 2,100 meters. The room's laughter died slightly. That level of precision from memory wasn't normal. Colonel Kingsley stepped forward, his tone shifting from desperate to annoyed. "Hayes, what did you just say?" "I said I'll take the mission, sir." Her voice remained flat, emotionless. "But I need authorization for the AN/APG-85 system." The room froze completely. General Mason Forrester, sitting in the back corner, with 4 stars gleaming on his collar, slowly stood up. His face had gone pale. "What did you just request?" he asked quietly. "Authorization for AN/APG-85 full-spectrum radar, sir. It's the only way to penetrate terrain masking in zero visibility conditions." The general stared at her for 3 long seconds. Then he picked up his phone. In the next 12 minutes, everything would change completely. Colonel Kingsley recovered first, stepping between Amber and the display. "Lieutenant Hayes, you've been with this unit for 3 weeks. You have 40 logged hours in the F-35. You are not, repeat, not flying this mission. Sit down." Amber didn't sit. She didn't move at all. Her hand drifted unconsciously to her collar, fingers brushing against something hidden beneath the fabric. Major Bradley laughed louder now, emboldened by the colonel's refusal. "You heard the man, sweetheart. Go back to the coffee pot where you belong. Leave the real flying to people who have actually seen combat." "I've seen combat," Amber said quietly. "Oh, really?" Lieutenant Ivy Fletcher stood up, arms crossed. "Where?" "A flight simulator at Pensacola." Amber's jaw tightened, but she said nothing. Master Sergeant Raymond Carter, the senior ground crew chief, watched from his station near the equipment bay. He'd been observing Amber for 3 weeks. Something about her movements didn't match her file. The way she walked, balanced, aware of every person in her vicinity. The way her eyes tracked the tactical displays, not reading them, calculating from them. On screen, the timer clicked down. 11 minutes. Captain Grace Allen, the unit's intelligence officer, pulled up her terminal. "Let me check her file." Her fingers flew across the keyboard. She pulled up Amber's personnel record. F-16 training at Luke Air Force Base. F-35 transition course at Eglin. Assignment to Bagram 3 weeks ago. Total combat missions, 0. But when Grace tried to access the detailed flight logs, something strange happened. A black screen appeared with red text. "Classified, level 5, clearance required." Grace blinked. She had level 4 clearance. She tried again, same result. "That's weird," she muttered. Amber was still standing at the display, studying the terrain map. Without being asked, she spoke again, this time with technical precision that made several pilots turn their heads. Optimal approach vector from northwest, terrain masking at 500 feet above ground level, rolling inverted delivery for GBU-54 laser-guided munitions. Time on target, 4 minutes 30 seconds from wheels up. Major Bradley stopped laughing. What did you just say about terrain masking? 500 feet AGL maintains radar shadow from enemy SAM sites while allowing laser designation through cloud cover using synthetic aperture ground mapping, Amber replied without looking at him. Standard low-altitude penetration profile. Airman Logan Fraser, a 22-year-old mechanic who had been changing a light bulb near the ceiling, almost dropped his screwdriver. He descended the ladder quickly, approaching Master Sergeant Carter. "Sarge," he whispered, "she just described the exact tactical approach from Operation Neptune's Spear. That's classified mission planning." Raymond nodded slowly. His eyes never left Amber. The radio crackled. "Bravo 2 to base. SEAL team at 30% ammunition. Estimate 9 minutes until position overrun. Request immediate air support. Repeat, immediate." The voice carried barely controlled panic. In the background, the distinctive crack of AK-47 fire punctuated every word. Colonel Kingsley's face went gray. He looked at Major Bradley. "Flynn?" Bradley shook his head. "I'm sorry, sir. Not in these conditions. I'd be flying blind into a box canyon with 8 hostile positions and 0 backup. I'd be dead before I dropped the first bomb." Kingsley looked at Captain Anderson. "Blake?" "Negative, sir. Same assessment." The colonel's shoulders sagged. He reached for his phone to call Central Command, to tell them that 267 SEALs were about to die because no one would fly the mission. Amber moved. She walked past Kingsley, past the assembled pilots, straight toward the exit that led to the flight line. Lieutenant Ivy Fletcher stepped into her path, blocking the doorway. "Where do you think you're going?" Ivy demanded. Amber's eyes met hers. For the first time, something flickered in that calm exterior. Not anger, but absolute certainty. "Get out of my way." The tone made Ivy step back involuntarily. It wasn't loud. It wasn't aggressive. It was the voice of someone who had given orders in situations far more dangerous than this, and who expected instant obedience. Amber pushed through the door. They laughed when she picked up the coffee tray. They scoffed when she volunteered for the suicide mission. But in the next 8 minutes, you're about to witness something that will make your jaw drop. What happens when 267 Navy SEALs are pinned down and the only person willing to fly is the woman they just mocked? Don't click away, because what she's hiding will blow your mind. Hit that like button if you want to see arrogance get destroyed, and subscribe because this story is just getting started. The flight line was dark except for the blue taxiway lights. Amber walked with purpose toward the F-35C Lightning II parked in the alert hangar. Behind her, boots pounded on concrete, Colonel Kingsley and Major Bradley running to stop her. "Hayes, that is a direct order. Stand down!" Amber kept walking. She reached the aircraft, ran her hand along the fuselage with unexpected familiarity. Master Sergeant Raymond appeared from the shadows, holding a flight helmet. "Ma'am," he said quietly, offering it to her. She took it without breaking stride. Raymond had seen something in her movements over the past 3 weeks that others had missed. The way she unconsciously touched aircraft with the reverence of a combat pilot, the calluses on her hands, thick ridges at the base of her thumbs from thousands of hours gripping a control stick, the faint scar on her neck that she kept hidden under her collar. Kingsley caught up, grabbing her shoulder. "Lieutenant, you are not authorized." "Check my clearance level," Amber interrupted, still not looking at him. She began her pre-flight walk-around, hands moving over access panels with practiced efficiency. "Then check yours." "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means I outrank you in classification, sir. You just don't know it yet." Before Kingsley could respond, Captain Blake Anderson jogged up. He'd left the command center through a different exit. In his hand was a small electronic tool, the kind used to access aircraft circuit breakers. While everyone had been distracted by the confrontation, Blake had moved ahead to the F-35. He'd opened an access panel and pulled circuit breaker number 3, the one that controlled the AN-APG-85 radar subsystem. Raymond had watched him do it. The old sergeant waited until Blake disappeared back toward the command center. Then Raymond simply walked over, opened the panel, and pushed the breaker back in. He said nothing to Amber, just gave her a slight nod. Sabotage had failed. Amber finished her walk around in 120 seconds. half the normal time, but with twice the thoroughness. She climbed the ladder to the cockpit, settled into the ejection seat, began strapping in. Her movements were muscle memory, automatic. This was not her first F-35, not her 10th, not even her 50th. As she pulled the harness tight, the sleeve of her flight suit rode up on her right forearm. Master Sergeant Raymond, standing at the base of the ladder, caught a glimpse of something that made his breath stop. A scar, 4 inches long, running from wrist to mid-forearm. Not a clean surgical scar, a burn pattern, the distinctive mark left by a Martin Baker Mach 16 ejection seat during emergency bailout. Combat pilots got scars like that. Trainee pilots didn't. Logan Fraser appeared next to Raymond, carrying the weapons authorization clipboard. "Sarge, did you see?" "I saw," Raymond said quietly. "Don't say anything. Just watch." Inside the cockpit, Amber's hands moved through the startup sequence without hesitation. Battery on, fuel pumps online, hydraulics green. The F-135 turbofan engine began its spool-up sequence, the whine building to a roar. 40,000 pounds of thrust vibrated through the airframe. The tower frequency crackled in her helmet. "November 77 Delta, you are not cleared for engine start. Shut down immediately." Amber's hand moved to the radio panel. She switched to a different frequency, 148.225 megahertz, a frequency that wasn't supposed to exist. "Negative tower, SEAL team needs me now. I'm rolling." In the command center, Airman Henry Edwins sat at the radio monitoring station. His eyes went wide. "Sir," he called to Colonel Kingsley, who had just returned inside, "she's transmitting on a classified frequency, 148.225. That's not in any standard comm plan." Captain Grace was still trying to access Amber's files. She'd gone deeper into the system, using administrative backdoor access that technically violated protocol. She found a subdirectory labeled Phantom. When she clicked it, the screen went black. White text appeared. "Access denied. DARPA classified program. Congressional oversight required." Grace's hands were shaking now. DARPA programs didn't show up in normal personnel files. They didn't show up anywhere. And congressional oversight meant this was beyond top secret. This was special access program territory. "Colonel," she said, her voice tight, "we have a problem. Hayes's file is linked to a DARPA program I've never heard of. It's called Phantom something. The rest is redacted." On the flight line, the F-35's canopy began to lower. Through the transparent surface, they could see Amber running through final checks. Her hands moved across switches and displays with the speed of someone who'd done this hundreds of times. Commander Ethan Cassian, the unit's senior test pilot, had been silent throughout the chaos. He'd watched Amber's approach to the aircraft, watched her pre-flight, watched her startup sequence. Now he keyed his radio. "Hayes, this is Commander Cassian. Before you taxi, you need to prove you can handle this bird. There's a simulator in Hangar 3. Fly a blind approach. 90 seconds. You complete it, I won't stop you." Amber's voice came back immediately, still on the classified frequency. "No time, Commander. SEALs have 7 minutes." "Then you're not taking off." Cassian was already moving toward the runway in a ground vehicle, positioning to physically block her taxi route. This was his last card to play. If she couldn't demonstrate competence, he had authority to abort the mission. Amber sat in the cockpit for 3 seconds. Then she shut down the engine. Everyone thought she was giving up. Major Bradley actually laughed through the radio. Finally came to her senses. But Amber wasn't giving up. She climbed out of the F-35, dropped to the tarmac, and sprinted toward Hangar 3. She covered the 200 meters in under 30 seconds, burst through the hangar door, and threw herself into the F-35 simulator without even removing her helmet. Commander Cassian arrived right behind her, slightly out of breath. He pulled up the most difficult scenario in the database. Category 3 instrument approach, 0 visibility, crosswind 35 knots gusting to 50, simulated hydraulic failure on final. Most pilots needed 300 seconds minimum. Perfect execution might be possible in 180 seconds. "Clock starts now," Cassian said. Amber's hands blurred. The simulator cockpit erupted with warning lights and alarms. She ignored them all, her fingers dancing across controls, her eyes scanning instruments in a pattern that suggested deep experience. She flew the approach entirely on instruments, never once looking up at the simulated windscreen. 65 seconds later, the simulator registered a perfect touchdown. Center line, within 5 feet of the target point. Total time, 73 seconds. Cassian stared at the timer display. That wasn't possible. That was 40% faster than his own personal best. He looked through the simulator canopy at Amber, who was already unstrapping, climbing out, running back toward her F-35. He didn't try to stop her. Back at the command center, General Forrester was on his encrypted phone. His voice was low, urgent. "Yes, Mr. Secretary, I understand. Yes, sir. Authorization confirmed." He lowered the phone, his face unreadable. He looked at Colonel Kingsley. "Stand down. Let her fly." "Sir?" "That's an order, Colonel. You don't have the clearance to understand why. Just trust me. If anyone can bring those SEALs home, it's her." "But, sir, she's a trainee." "She's not," Forrester interrupted quietly, "and that's all I can tell you." On the flight line, Amber was back in her cockpit. This time, no one tried to stop her. The engine spooled up again. She pulled on her oxygen mask, locked her visor down. Her voice came over the radio, cold and professional. "Tower, November 77 Delta, requesting immediate departure, runway 21. The tower controller looked at Colonel Kingsley, who nodded reluctantly. "November 77 Delta, cleared for immediate takeoff. Godspeed." The F-35 rolled forward, gaining speed. At 150 knots, Amber pulled back on the stick, and the aircraft leaped into the black Afghan night. The blue flames from the engine were visible for 30 seconds, then disappeared into the clouds. Inside the command center, the tactical display showed her aircraft icon moving northwest toward the Kunar Valley. Someone had patched through the SEAL team's radio frequency to the overhead speakers. The sounds of combat filled the room. Shouts, automatic weapons shear, explosions. "Bravo 2, this is Ghost 7, Amber's voice came through, crisp and calm. The SEAL team leader's response was confused. "Ghost 7? Negative, we requested air support, not... Wait, who is Ghost 7? Major Bradley frowned. "Did she just use a call sign? She doesn't have a combat call sign." Lieutenant Ivy Fletcher pulled up the call sign registry on her terminal. "There's no Ghost 7 in the database. Actually, there's no Ghost call sign at all. That numbering system doesn't exist." Captain Grace's fingers were still flying across her keyboard, trying to break through the firewalls surrounding Amber's file. She found another fragment of information, a reference to a unit designation, VMFA 121, Marine Fighter Attack Squadron 121, the Green Knights, the first operational F-35 squadron deployed to combat in Syria back in 2017. But Amber's file said she'd been in training in 2017. She shouldn't have any connection to VMFA 121, unless the file was wrong. On the tactical display, Amber's F-35 was approaching the valley. The terrain was brutal, mountains rising to 14,000 feet on both sides, the valley floor a narrow canyon barely a mile wide. 8 red enemy position markers glowed on the slopes. In the center, clustered in a small defensive perimeter, the 267 blue friendly markers were surrounded. The radio crackled again. "Ghost 7, be advised, weather is 00, ceiling 50 feet. You will not have visual acquisition of targets." "Copy that, Bravo 2. I don't need visual." What happened next made everyone in the command center lean forward. On the tactical display, a new overlay suddenly appeared. It wasn't the standard radar picture. This was something else entirely, a 3-dimensional terrain map with such high resolution that individual rocks were visible. The image showed the valley from above, but also somehow showed through the clouds, through the weather, revealing the exact positions of all 8 enemy strong points. "What am I looking at?" Colonel Kingsley demanded. Captain Grace's screen suddenly unlocked. New data streamed across it. Her eyes went wider with every line she read. "Sir," she said slowly, "the AN/APG-85 isn't supposed to exist yet. It's an experimental synthetic aperture radar system that can penetrate weather and terrain. DARPA's been testing it for 3 years. According to this, only one pilot has ever successfully employed it in combat conditions." "Who?" Grace looked up, her face pale. "The data's redacted, but the test pilot's call sign is listed here, Ghost 7. The room went completely silent. On screen, Amber's F-35 was making its attack run, flying at 500 feet above the valley floor, suicidally low in these mountains. She banked hard left, then inverted, then rolled upright again. To the pilots watching, it looked insane. To Amber, it was muscle memory. She selected weapons. 12 Bu-54 laser-guided bombs, each 500 pounds. She'd need 4 minutes 30 seconds to deliver all 12 on target. She had exactly 4 minutes 30 seconds before the SEALs were overrun. Bravo 2, mark your position with infrared strobe, 30 seconds until weapons release. Marking now, Ghost 7, and ma'am, whoever you are, thank you. Amber didn't respond. Her hands moved across the weapons panel with surgical precision. Target 1 locked, target 2 locked. Each bomb had a specific enemy position, a specific aim point. She was threading them through a box canyon in zero visibility, banking around mountains she couldn't see, trusting completely in a radar system that officially didn't exist. The first bomb released, then the second, then the third. In the command center, they watched the weapons tracks arc down toward the valley. Master Sergeant Raymond stood with his arms crossed, a slight smile on his weathered face. Logan Fraser was gripping the edge of his workstation, barely breathing. General Forrester watched the display with the expression of a man who had seen this before. His hand unconsciously moved to his chest, where 4 rows of ribbons decorated his uniform. One of those ribbons was a Distinguished Flying Cross, awarded for a mission in Syria 3 years ago, a mission where a single F-35 pilot had saved an entire company of Marines trapped in Raqqa, a pilot whose identity remained classified, a pilot codenamed Ghost 7. Wait, did you catch that? The database just revealed something that changes everything. If you're as shocked as I am right now, smash that like button. And here's the thing, we're only halfway through this story. The biggest reveal is still coming. Subscribe and turn on notifications because you do not want to miss what happens next. The first explosion lit up the valley like dawn. Target position 1, a heavy machine gun nest on the north ridge, disappeared in a precise blast. 3 seconds later, target position 2 followed, then 3, 4, 5. The enemy had no time to react, no time to disperse. Each bomb landed within 2 meters of its aim point. Surgical, perfect, impossible in these conditions, unless you knew exactly what you were doing. Splash 8, Amber's voice reported calmly. All targets destroyed. Bravo 2, you have a clear exfil route to the east. Recommend you move now before reinforcements arrive. The SEAL team leader's voice was thick with emotion. Copy that, Ghost 7. Moving now. I don't know who you are, but you just saved 267 lives. We owe you. You don't owe me anything, Amber replied. Get your people home safe. Her F-35 climbed back into the clouds, turning toward Bagram. The mission clock read 4 minutes 41 seconds, from first bomb release to last. 11 seconds over her estimate. She'd chalk that up to the crosswind she hadn't fully accounted for. In the command center, pandemonium had erupted. People were cheering, clapping, some actually crying with relief. 267 American warriors would see tomorrow because of what just happened. But several people weren't celebrating. They were staring at the tactical display with expressions of deep confusion and growing understanding. Captain Grace had finally broken through the last firewall in Amber's personnel file. What she found made her hands shake so badly she could barely hold her tablet. She stood up, walked slowly to General Forrester, and showed him the screen. The general nodded. I know. Sir, this says she has... How is this possible? It's possible because she's the best we've ever trained, and now you understand why I authorized the mission. Major Bradley was reading over Grace's shoulder. His face had gone from triumphant to confused to shocked in about 10 seconds. This file says she has 340 hours in the F-35. 340. That's 3 times what her official record shows. And these combat missions are classified, Forrester interrupted sharply, and will remain classified. Is that clear, Major? Bradley stepped back. Yes, sir, but the damage was done. Others had seen the screen. Rumors were already spreading through the command center like wildfire. 340 hours. Combat deployments to Syria, operations in Iraq. A classified DARPA program. The pieces were starting to fit together, but the picture they formed didn't make any sense. If Amber Hayes was really an experimental test pilot with hundreds of combat hours, why was she assigned to coffee duty in a backwater command center in Afghanistan? Lieutenant Ivy Fletcher was having her own crisis of understanding. She'd spent 3 weeks undermining Amber, spreading whispers that she'd only gotten into the Air Force because of gender quotas, that she was incompetent, that she didn't belong. Now those words tasted like ashes in her mouth. She pulled out her phone, opened her message history. 3 days ago, she'd sent a group text to 6 other female officers. That new girl Hayes is making us all look bad. can't even figure out basic systems. They're letting anyone fly these days. Ivy deleted the message. Then she deleted the entire thread. It wouldn't change what she'd done, but at least there'd be no evidence. Commander Cassian was reviewing the simulator data from Amber's 73-second blind approach. He ran it through the analysis program 3 times, certain the software had glitched. But no, every input was perfect. Every correction was anticipatory, not reactive. She'd flown that approach like someone who had done it 1,000 times before. Maybe she had. Speaking of advanced radar systems, let's talk about something that can actually improve your daily life. Cutting-edge noise-canceling headphones designed for professionals who need complete focus. Whether you're a pilot reviewing flight data, a trader analyzing market trends, or just someone who wants to block out distractions, military-grade audio technology is now available for civilian use. These aren't your average earbuds. They use active noise cancellation algorithms originally developed for combat pilots, allowing you to maintain situational awareness while filtering out harmful frequencies, perfect for high-pressure environments where split-second decisions matter. Amber's F35 appeared on approach, gear down, landing lights on. She flew a perfect pattern, touched down smooth as glass, rolled out, and taxied back to the alert hangar. Master Sergeant Raymond and his ground crew were waiting. When she shut down the engine and popped in the canopy, Raymond noticed something. Her hands weren't shaking. Most pilots after their first combat mission, especially one that intense, showed at least some physiological stress response. Amber's hands were rock steady, because this wasn't her first combat mission. It wasn't her 10th. It wasn't even close. She climbed down from the cockpit, removed her helmet, and started walking back toward the command center. Major Bradley intercepted her on the flight line, along with Lieutenant Ivy Fletcher and Captain Blake Anderson. They wanted answers. "Hayes," Bradley demanded, "what the hell was that? How did you fly that mission?" Amber's expression was neutral. "I followed the flight plan, sir." "That's not a flight plan, that's a miracle. That radar system, the terrain penetration, you can't just pull that out of nowhere. The system works as designed, sir." She tried to walk past him. Bradley grabbed her shoulder, not roughly, but firmly. "You don't get to walk away. You just did something impossible. We deserve an explanation." That's when it happened. Bradley's grip on her flight suit pulled the fabric down slightly. The collar shifted. For just a moment, less than a second, something became visible on Amber's right shoulder, near her collarbone. Dark ink against pale skin. The edge of a tattoo. Master Sergeant Raymond saw it. His eyes widened. Logan Fraser, standing nearby with a refueling hose, saw it too. He dropped the hose. Lieutenant Ivy Fletcher had the best view. She saw a partial outline. Wings, maybe? And numbers. A date? She couldn't be sure, but her breath caught anyway. Amber pulled free, adjusted her collar, and kept walking. But that brief glimpse had changed something. The tattoo wasn't just decoration. It was a unit insignia. And unit tattoos meant belonging. They meant history. They meant service. Trainee pilots didn't have unit tattoos. Combat veterans did. Inside the command center, the SEAL team had made it to their extraction point. The radio confirmed all 267 personnel accounted for. 0 casualties. A rescue helicopter was inbound. The mission was a complete success. But the attention had shifted from the rescued SEALs to the woman who'd saved them. Amber walked through the door to scattered applause that quickly died into uncomfortable silence. Everyone was staring at her with new eyes. Eyes that held questions, confusion, and for some, the first stirrings of respect. Colonel Kingsley approached her, his expression conflicted. "Lieutenant Hayes, I owe you an apology. I should have trusted your judgment. No apology necessary, sir. You made the call with the information you had. But I didn't have the right information, did I?" Kingsley glanced at General Forrester. "Care to explain why a pilot with your capabilities was assigned to my unit without proper briefing?" "That's above your clearance level, Colonel," Forrester said quietly. Kingsley's jaw tightened, but he nodded. Military hierarchy was absolute. If the general said it was classified, it was classified. But that didn't stop the anger building behind his eyes. He'd been made to look like a fool in front of his entire command. Someone had put an elite combat pilot in his unit and told him she was a trainee. That kind of operational security failure was unacceptable, unless it wasn't a failure at all, unless it was intentional. Amber stood at attention, waiting for dismissal. Her posture was correct, professional. But there was something different now, a subtle shift in how she held herself. Like a mask had slipped slightly. The shy, uncertain trainee was gone. In her place stood someone who had flown into hell and brought 267 souls back with her. Captain Grace approached with her tablet. "Ma'am, I need to verify some information for the after-action report. Your flight hours are classified," Amber interrupted politely. "The radar system you employed, classified. Your previous deployments, classified." Amber's expression never changed. She might as well have been reading a phone book. Grace persisted. "Ma'am, I pulled up a reference to VMFA 121, the Green Knights. That's a Marine squadron. Why would an Air Force pilot have connections to—" "Captain," General Forrester's voice cut through like a knife, "you are dangerously close to violating the Espionage Act. I suggest you close that tablet and forget what you've seen." Grace paled. The Espionage Act meant prison time. She closed the tablet, backed away, but the name had been spoken. VMFA 121. Several of the older pilots in the room recognized it. That was the squadron that had conducted the first F-35 combat operations in Syria back in 2017. They'd been instrumental in the liberation of Raqqa, providing close air support for coalition forces fighting house to house against entrenched enemy positions. There had been rumors about that deployment, whispers of a pilot who had flown 90-plus combat missions in 6 months, an insane pace. A pilot with an almost supernatural ability to put bombs exactly where they needed to be, even in the worst conditions. A pilot whose identity was never disclosed, whose face never appeared in photographs, whose name was scrubbed from every official record. A ghost. Major Bradley was putting the pieces together. His hands had started shaking, not from fear, but from the realization of what he'd done. He'd mocked this woman. He'd called her a coffee girl. He'd laughed at her. And she'd just executed a combat mission that he, with 15 years of experience, had refused to fly because he thought it was impossible. The shame hit him like a physical blow. Lieutenant Ivy Fletcher was experiencing similar vertigo. She'd sabotaged Amber's reputation for 3 weeks. She'd convinced other officers that Amber was incompetent. She'd actively worked to undermine someone who, it now appeared, had forgotten more about combat flying than Ivy would ever know. The guilt was crushing. Captain Blake Anderson, the man who had sabotaged Amber's radar system, was very quietly trying to slip out of the room. Master Sergeant Raymond caught his eye, shook his head slightly. Blake froze. The old sergeant knew what he'd done. Blake's career was over. The only question was whether he had faced court-martial or just a quiet discharge. Commander Cassian approached Amber. Unlike the others, he wasn't angry or ashamed. He was curious. "That simulator run," he said quietly, 73 seconds. That's not possible for someone with 40 hours total time in the aircraft. Amber looked at him. For the first time, a ghost of a smile touched her lips. "You're right, Commander, it's not." "So, what's your real number? Classified? Is it more than my 1,200 hours? Amber's smile widened fractionally. She didn't answer. Cassian nodded slowly. "Understood, ma'am. For what it's worth, that was the finest piece of flying I've ever witnessed. It was an honor to watch." He stepped back and rendered a crisp salute. Amber returned it, surprised. Cassian was a commander, 3 ranks above her lieutenant status. He shouldn't have saluted first. That was a gesture of deep respect, acknowledging not rank, but capability. The room noticed. Several other officers, following Cassian's lead, came to attention. General Forrester stepped forward. "All right, everyone out. This debrief is over. Lieutenant Hayes, you're with me." The room cleared quickly. Amber followed the general to a small conference room off the main operations center. He closed the door, activated a white noise generator to prevent eavesdropping, and sat down heavily. "That was sloppy," he said. Amber's military bearing softened slightly. "Yes, sir. I should have maintained cover better. Using the Ghost 7 call sign was a mistake. Now they're asking questions. The SEAL team was dying, sir. I needed them to know I was experienced enough to pull off the rescue. Otherwise, they might have made decisions based on thinking I was a trainee." Forrester nodded. "Fair point. But now your cover here is compromised. Half the base saw that tattoo when Bradley grabbed you. The other half has heard about the classified files. We're going to have to move you." "Understood, sir. Where?" "Pentagon. The Joint Chiefs want to activate Ghost Unit full-time. You'll be the commander. 5 additional pilots, all with your clearance level. Deep strike missions, high-value targets, situations where conventional forces can't operate. Amber was quiet for a moment. That's a significant escalation, sir. The world's getting more dangerous. We need operators who can work in the shadows. Operators like you. He pulled out a folder, slid it across the table. These are your team candidates. You have 24 hours to review and make selections. Amber opened the folder. 5 faces looked back at her from photographs. 4 men, 1 woman, names redacted. All that showed were call signs. Phantom 2, Shadow 6, Wraith 4, Spectre 1, Reaper 9. These pilots don't officially exist, Forrester continued. Just like you. They've been operating undercover for the past 3 years, running missions that never happened, flying aircraft that weren't there. Now we're bringing the band together. What's the mission profile, sir? Whatever the president decides. Could be anything from precision strikes on terrorist leadership to electronic warfare against near-peer adversaries. You'll have authorization to employ weapons and systems that are officially still in development, like that radar you used tonight. Amber closed the folder. When do I leave? 0600 tomorrow. Helicopter to Kabul, fixed wing to Ramstein, then on to Andrews Air Force Base. You'll be at the Pentagon by this time tomorrow night. What do I tell the people here? Nothing. You'll disappear. As far as they're concerned, you were transferred for classified reasons. They'll speculate, they'll gossip, but they'll never know the truth. That's how this works. Amber stood, prepared to leave. Forrester stopped her with a question. Why didn't you tell them to back off? When they were mocking you, treating you like a trainee, you could have shut them down with a few words. Why didn't you? Amber thought about it. Because real warriors don't advertise, sir. Service doesn't seek recognition. I was exactly where I needed to be. Forrester smiled. That's why you're getting this command. Dismissed, Lieutenant. Amber saluted and left. She walked through the now empty command center toward the temporary quarters building. The base was quiet at this hour. 0430, the dead time between night operations and morning routine. She was halfway across the compound when she heard footsteps behind her. She turned. Master Sergeant Raymond approached, alone. He came to attention, saluted. Ma'am, I wanted to apologize. For what, Sergeant? For not speaking up earlier. I knew there was something different about you, the way you moved, the way you looked at aircraft. I should have said something to the colonel. You did exactly what you should have done. You watched, you learned, and when it mattered, when that saboteur tried to disable my aircraft, you fixed it. Amber's expression was serious. You saved those SEALs' lives just as much as I did. Raymond nodded slowly. The tattoo. I only saw a piece of it, but I recognized the colors. VMFA 121, right? The Green Knights? I can neither confirm nor deny that, Sergeant. Understood, ma'am. But if someone had served with that unit, and if they'd been part of the Raqqa operation in 2017, I'd want them to know that my nephew was one of the Marines trapped in that city. He made it out alive. Someone pulled off a miracle to get him and his brothers out. So whoever that pilot was, Raymond's voice caught slightly. Tell them thank you. Tell them Corporal Jimmy Carter owes them his life. Amber was quiet for a long moment. Then she reached into her flight suit pocket, pulled out a challenge coin. It was worn, the edges smoothed by years of handling. She pressed it into Raymond's palm. Give this to your nephew. Tell him he doesn't owe anyone anything. Tell him to live a good life. That's payment enough. Raymond looked demon at the coin. One side showed the VMFA 121 squadron insignia. The other side had a number engraved on it. 89, the number of missions flown. His hand closed around it. Ma'am, it's been an honor. The honor was mine, Sergeant. They saluted each other one final time. Raymond walked away, clutching the coin like a treasure. Amber continued toward her quarters, but she never made it there. A black SUV with diplomatic plates pulled up beside her. The rear door opened. General Forrester was inside. Change of plans, he said. We're leaving now. Sir, you just became the most talked about person on this base. By sunrise, every soldier here will know about the Ghost 7 mission. Some of them will start asking questions we can't answer. Better to extract you now before this turns into a circus. Amber climbed into the SUV. It drove toward the helicopter pad, where a UH-60 Blackhawk was already spinning up. She didn't look back at the command center, at the people she'd worked alongside for 3 weeks. This was how it always went for operators like her. Arrive quietly, work in obscurity, then vanish the moment their cover broke. Ghost Unit wasn't just a call sign. It was a lifestyle. The helicopter lifted off, just as the first rays of sun broke over the Hindu Kush mountains. Below, Bagram Airfield began stirring to life, unaware that one of its most valuable assets was already gone. Inside the command center, Captain Grace Allen sat alone at her workstation, still trying to make sense of what she'd discovered. She pulled up Amber's photo from the personnel database and studied it. Young face, 27 years old, blonde hair, blue eyes, unremarkable features. The kind of person who could disappear into a crowd without anyone noticing, except those eyes. Grace zoomed in on the photograph. Even in a staged official portrait, there was something in those eyes. Depth, experience. The 1,000-yard stare of someone who'd seen things most people couldn't imagine. Grace pulled up her email, started typing a message to her contact at Air Force Personnel Command. She needed to know the truth. She needed to understand how someone like Amber Hayes could exist. Before she hit send, the computer screen went black. Text appeared in blood-red letters. "Stop investigating. This is your only warning." Grace's hands jumped off the keyboard like it was electrified. The message disappeared, replaced by her normal desktop. But the threat was clear. Whoever controlled Amber's information had just reached through cyberspace to tell Grace to back off. She closed her laptop. Some mysteries weren't meant to be solved. Major Bradley sat in his quarters, staring at the wall. His phone kept buzzing with messages from other pilots, asking what happened, demanding details. He ignored them all. Instead, he replayed every interaction with Amber over the past 3 weeks. The dismissive comments, the laughter, the way he'd called her sweetheart and told her to stick to coffee. He'd been wrong, catastrophically, humiliatingly wrong, and 267 men had almost died because of his arrogance. He pulled out a bottle of whiskey, poured 3 fingers, then poured it back. No, he didn't deserve the escape. He needed to sit with this shame, let it burn, let it teach him a lesson he'd never forget. Never judge a warrior by their cover, judge them by their actions. Lieutenant Ivy Fletcher was crying in her room, something she hadn't done since basic training. She'd spent 3 weeks destroying Amber's reputation. She'd convinced herself it was justified, that Amber was getting special treatment, that she hadn't earned her place, but the truth was darker. Ivy had been jealous. Jealous of how effortlessly competent Amber seemed. Jealous of how she never complained, never made excuses, just quietly did her job. And now Ivy understood why. Amber wasn't competing with anyone. She was operating on a completely different level. The gap between them wasn't just experience. It was a chasm of capability that might never be bridged. Ivy grabbed her phone, opened her contacts, found Amber's number. She started typing an apology, then deleted it, started again, deleted it again. What could she possibly say that would matter? "Sorry I tried to ruin your career. Turns out you're a secret superhero." She threw the phone on the bed. Some mistakes couldn't be fixed with words. Captain Blake Anderson was in Colonel Kingsley's office, standing at attention. The colonel sat behind his desk, hands folded, expression unreadable. "Captain," Kingsley said slowly, "Master Sergeant Raymond filed a report 20 minutes ago. He states that you accessed Lieutenant Hayes' aircraft and deliberately disabled her radar system. Is this accurate?" Blake's throat was dry. "Yes, sir. Why?" I thought she was incompetent. I thought she'd get herself killed, maybe take others with her. I was trying to prevent a disaster by sabotaging United States military equipment during an active combat operation." Kingsley's voice was ice. "Do you understand what you've done? You didn't just commit sabotage. You attempted to cause the deaths of 267 Navy SEALs. If Sergeant Raymond hadn't caught your tampering, those men would be dead right now." Blake's knees almost buckled. The full weight of his action hit him like a truck. "Sir, You're confined to quarters pending court-martial proceedings. Your flight status is revoked. Your security clearance is suspended. And if I had my way, you'd be in the brig already. Get out of my sight." Blake saluted mechanically and left. His career was over. More than that, his entire identity was over. He'd been a fighter pilot for 8 years. Now he was just a man who'd tried to kill American soldiers because of his own arrogance. The sun was fully up now, casting long shadows across Bagram Airfield. The morning shift arrived, relieving the overnight crew. Word spread quickly about what had happened. Different versions of the story circulated, some accurate, some wildly exaggerated, but all of them centered on the same person. The quiet blonde lieutenant who had served coffee and turned out to be something else entirely. By noon, Amber Hayes had become a legend. The Black Hawk cut through Afghan airspace at 160 knots, heading toward Kabul International Airport. Inside the cargo bay, Amber sat with her helmet bag and a small duffel, everything she owned in the world. General Forrester was across from her, working on a tablet. Neither spoke. The helicopter's turbine whine made conversation difficult anyway. Amber looked out the window at the mountains sliding past below. Somewhere down there, 267 SEALs were being extracted, heading home to families who had come dangerously close to never seeing them again. She'd saved them, but she'd also blown her cover doing it. 3 weeks of careful positioning, gone in 12 minutes. Was it worth it? She thought of Master Sergeant Raymond's nephew, Corporal Jimmy Carter, one of the Marines she'd pulled out of Raqqa 3 years ago. She'd never met him, never knew his name until tonight, but she'd saved his life back then, and tonight she'd saved 267 more. Yes, it was worth it. The helicopter landed at Kabul 45 minutes later. A C-17 Globemaster sat on the military ramp, engines already running. Forrester led Amber aboard. The cargo bay was empty except for 2 rows of seats and a secure communications station. The moment they were airborne, climbing toward cruising altitude, Forrester activated an encrypted video link. A face appeared on the screen. 4 stars on the collar, iron gray hair, piercing eyes. Admiral William Hutchins, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Lieutenant Hayes, the Admiral's voice was grave, General Forrester has briefed me on the situation. First, let me say thank you. You saved a lot of lives tonight. Just doing my job, sir. Your job was to maintain cover and observe enemy patterns at Bagram. Instead, you revealed advanced weapon systems, used classified tactics, and exposed yourself to half the Air Force. That's not following orders, Lieutenant. Amber's jaw tightened slightly. Sir, 267 Americans were about to die. I made a tactical decision that the mission objective was secondary to preserving life. And you were right, Hutchins said, which is why you're not facing disciplinary action. But we have a problem. Your identity is compromised. Multiple personnel saw that tattoo. More accessed your classified files. By tomorrow, rumors will be all over the intelligence community. I understand, sir. Which brings me to why I'm on this call. We're activating Ghost Unit full-time. You're the commander. 5 additional pilots, all with special access program clearance. Your unit will handle missions conventional forces can't touch. But here's the catch. We need to control the narrative about what happened at Bagram. Forrester leaned forward. We're going to leak a partial story. Female pilot volunteers for dangerous rescue, succeeds against the odds, turns out to have more experience than her file indicated. It'll make you a hero, but the classified details, Ghost Unit, the DARPA systems, your 90 missions in Syria, all of that stays buried. So, I'm bait, Amber said. You want me visible as a distraction while Ghost Unit operates in the shadows? Exactly, Hutchins confirmed. You'll do a brief press conference at the Pentagon, receive a commendation, smile for cameras. Then you disappear into Ghost Unit and never surface again. The public gets their hero story. We get operational security. Amber considered it. What about the people at Bagram, the ones who saw too much? Already handled. Everyone who accessed your files has been read into a modified special access program. They've been told that revealing any information carries 20 years in federal prison. They'll keep quiet. And the ones who saw the tattoo? Forrester smiled grimly. We're starting a rumor that the tattoo was fake, that you wore it as part of an undercover operation to infiltrate extremist groups. It's ridiculous, but it gives people a non-classified explanation they can live with. The video link terminated. Amber leaned back against the cargo webbing. She'd spent 3 years living in the shadows, flying missions that didn't exist, becoming a ghost. Now they wanted her to step into the light briefly before vanishing again. It felt wrong somehow. Dishonest. But that was the nature of classified work. Nothing was ever fully true. Nothing was ever fully false. Everything existed in a gray zone of operational necessity. The C-17 landed at Ramstein Air Base in Germany 8 hours later. Another aircraft waited, a smaller Gulfstream G650, the kind used to transport senior government officials. Amber transferred over, grabbed a meal from the onboard galley, and collapsed into a leather seat. She was asleep before they reached cruising altitude. She dreamed of Raqqa, the city in ruins, smoke rising from 1,000 fires. her F-35 banking hard over collapsed buildings, while the targeting pod tracked enemy positions. Radio chatter in her ears. Ghost 7, we have wounded, need immediate... An explosion on the ground, cutting off the transmission. Her hand on the weapons release, watching the GBU-54 separate cleanly, tracking downward, impacting precisely where it needed to. The secondary explosion clearing a path. Marines running through the gap, carrying their wounded, getting out. 89 times. She'd done that 89 times in 6 months. 89 missions where one mistake would have meant American deaths. 89 times she'd been perfect. And now, they wanted her to do it again. Not 89 times, hundreds of times, for years. She wept as the Gulf Stream descended into Andrews Air Force Base. Dawn was breaking over Washington, D.C., painting the Capitol building gold. The aircraft landed smoothly, taxied to a secure hangar. When the door opened, Amber saw a reception committee waiting. Vice Admiral Samuel Norbert stood at the front, 4 other officers behind him, all senior ranks, all looking at her with expressions that mixed respect, curiosity, and something else, calculation. They were measuring her, trying to determine if she was as good as the reports claimed. Lieutenant Hayes, Norbert extended his hand. Welcome to the Pentagon. We have a busy day ahead. They put her in a staff car, drove through the morning traffic into the Pentagon's secure underground parking. From there, an elevator carried them deep into the building's classified levels, areas that didn't appear on any public floor plan. They emerged in a corridor lined with biometric scanners and armed guards. Norbert led her to a conference room. Inside, the 5 pilots from the folder were waiting. Stop. Rewind. Did that radio transmission just say what I think it said? Ghost 7? Phantom Blade Protocol? If your heart is racing right now, you're not alone. Drop a comment below with your theory about who she really is. And if you haven't subscribed yet, do it now, because the next 5 minutes will change everything you thought you knew. The 5 pilots stood as Amber entered. 4 men, 1 woman, all in their late 20s or early 30s. All had the same look, quiet competence mixed with controlled danger. These weren't regular military personnel. These were apex predators in human form. Ghost 7, the first pilot said, extending his hand. Phantom 2, pleasure to finally meet the legend. Amber shook hands with each of them. Phantom 2 was built like a linebacker, probably former Navy. Shadow 6 was lean and intense, Army Special Operations written all over him. Wraith 4 had the call sign tattooed on his forearm in barely visible ink. Spectre 1 was the woman, short dark hair, cold eyes, Israeli accent when she spoke. Reaper 9 looked like an accountant until you saw his hands, scarred knuckles, burn marks identical to Amber's ejection seat injury. You all know why we're here, Norbert said, closing the door. Ghost Unit is now operational. Lieutenant Hayes is your commander. Your first mission briefing is in 2 hours. But first, Lieutenant Hayes has a public relations obligation to fulfill. They moved to a different room, this one set up like a television studio. Makeup artists swarmed Amber, touching up her appearance. Someone brought her a fresh uniform with all her ribbons properly aligned. A media coach gave her a 30-second briefing. Keep answers short. Don't elaborate. Stick to the approved narrative. The press conference was held in the Pentagon briefing room. 40 journalists filled the seats. Cameras lined the back wall. Amber stood at the podium, feeling completely exposed. This was worse than any combat mission. At least in combat, she could fight back. A Pentagon spokesperson made the introduction. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce Lieutenant Amber Hayes, United States Air Force. Last night, Lieutenant Hayes volunteered for and successfully completed a high-risk rescue operation in Afghanistan, saving 267 American service members. She'll make a brief statement and take a few questions. Amber stepped to the microphone. Her hands didn't shake, but she wanted them to. Last night, I was privileged to support our Navy SEAL teams during a critical operation. The mission succeeded because of the incredible bravery of those warriors on the ground, the skill of our ground crew, and the technology provided by our defense industry partners. I was simply the pilot. The credit belongs to everyone who made that mission possible. Hands shot up. The spokesperson pointed to a reporter from the Washington Post. Lieutenant Hayes, reports indicate you're only 27 years old with limited flight experience. How were you able to execute such a difficult mission? Amber had been coached for this. I've received excellent training from the Air Force. That training prepared me for the challenges I faced. Another reporter. Can you describe what happened during the mission? I'm sorry, operational details remain classified. What I can say is that American lives were in danger, and multiple agencies worked together to bring everyone home safely. A third reporter, more aggressive. Sources tell us your personnel file contains classified information. Can you comment on that? I cannot discuss classified matters. Is it true you're part of a secret program? I cannot discuss classified matters. The questions kept coming, each one probing for the truth behind the official story. Amber deflected them all with the same calm professionalism she'd used in the cockpit. After 15 minutes, the spokesperson ended the conference. Amber was escorted out through a side door, away from the cameras. Vice Admiral Norbert was waiting in the hallway. Well done. That bought us the cover story we need. Now let's get to the real work. Back in the classified conference room, the 6 Ghost Unit pilots gathered around a table covered with satellite imagery and intelligence reports. Norbert activated a large display screen. Your first mission, he said, Syria. 15 humanitarian aid workers captured by ISIS remnants 4 days ago. Held in a compound near Al-Bukamal, close to the Iraqi border. 400 enemy fighters in the area, plus armored vehicles. Intelligence suggests the hostages will be executed in 72 hours. Shadow 6 whistled. 400 against 6? Those are terrible odds. For them, Spectre 1 said with a slight smile. Norbert continued. Conventional rescue is impossible. Too many hostiles, too entrenched. Special Operations Command has declined the mission, which means it's yours. You launch in 36 hours. Lieutenant Hayes will brief the tactical plan. All eyes turned to Amber. This was the moment. If she wanted this command, wanted this responsibility, she needed to prove she deserved it. She stood, walked to the display, studied the satellite imagery for 30 seconds. Then she began. We hit them at night, 0200 local time. Here's the problem. The compound is in a populated area. Civilian structures within 100 meters. We can't use heavy ordnance without risking innocent casualties. So, we're going surgical. She pointed to different locations on the map. Phantom 2 and Shadow 6, you take the southern approach. F-35Bs configured for close air support. You'll suppress the armored vehicles and establish a no-drive zone around the compound. Wraith 4 and Spectre 1, eastern approach. You'll provide electronic warfare coverage, jam their communications, blind their radar. Reaper 9 and I take the actual target. Precision strikes on guard positions. Then we provide top cover while a ground team extracts the hostages. What ground team? Reaper 9 asked. SOCOM declined the mission. Delta Force didn't decline. They're already staging in Iraqi territory, waiting for air support they were told would never come. Once we eliminate the aerial threat, they'll cross the border and execute the extraction. Phantom 2 leaned back. This is insane. 6 aircraft against 400 enemy fighters? Even with our skill level, the odds don't matter. Amber interrupted quietly. 15 innocent people will die if we don't act. That's all I need to know. The room went silent. Then, slowly, each pilot nodded. This was why they had been selected for Ghost Unit, not just because of their flying ability, but because they understood the mission came first. Always. Wheels up in 36 hours, Norbert confirmed. You'll stage out of Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar. Dismissed. The pilots filed out. Amber started to follow, but Norbert stopped her. Lieutenant, a word. She turned back. Norbert gestured to a chair. She sat. I need to know something, he said. That press conference, you hated every second of it, didn't you? Yes, sir. Why? Most people love recognition. You've earned it. Amber considered the question. Because it's not real, sir. Those journalists don't understand what happened. They see a feel-good story about overcoming odds. They don't see the 267 families who almost received death notifications. They don't see Captain Blake Anderson, whose career I destroyed. They don't see the truth. That war is ugly and complicated and doesn't fit into a 30-second news segment. Norbert nodded. That's the right answer. The day you start believing your own press clippings is the day you become useless to me. Stay humble, stay focused, and keep bringing our people home. Understood? Yes, sir. Dismissed. Amber left the Pentagon as the sun was setting. A staff car drove her to temporary quarters at Joint Base Anacostia Bowling, a small apartment reserved for transient officers. She dropped her duffel on the bed, stood at the window looking at the Washington Monument lit up against the darkening sky. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "Turn on the news." She grabbed the remote, flipped through channels until she found CNN. Her own face stared back at her from the screen. The chyron read, "Female F-35 pilot saves 267 in daring Afghanistan rescue." The news anchor was breathless with excitement. This remarkable story emerged from Afghanistan today, where a 27-year-old female pilot defied orders to execute one of the most dangerous rescue missions in recent military history. Lieutenant Amber Hayes, who Pentagon sources say was considered a trainee pilot, volunteered when more experienced pilots refused. Amber watched with growing discomfort as the story unfolded. They'd gotten some details right. The SEAL team trapped, the difficult conditions, the successful rescue, but they had also added embellishments. One report claimed she'd flown with battle damage from enemy fire. Another said she'd been shot down and ejected before completing the mission. None of that was true. The mission had been dangerous, but she'd never taken fire. Her aircraft had suffered no damage. The press was turning her into something she wasn't, a mythical figure who defied death itself. Her phone rang. "Master Sergeant Raymond." "Ma'am, you seeing this news coverage?" "Unfortunately, yes. They're saying you got shot down. That's not what happened." "I know, Sergeant, but that's how these stories work. The truth gets lost in the excitement." "Well, for what it's worth, ma'am, some of us know the real story, and we're spreading it to anyone who will listen. You flew a perfect mission. No drama, just skill and courage. That's what people should be hearing." Amber smiled slightly. "Thank you, Sergeant. That means more than you know." After hanging up, she checked her email. 372 messages had accumulated in the past 6 hours. Most were congratulations from people she had never met. A few were interview requests from media outlets. One was from Lieutenant Ivy Fletcher. Amber opened it hesitantly. "Ma'am, I don't expect you to read this, much less respond, but I need to say it anyway. I spent 3 weeks undermining you. I spread rumors. I questioned your competence. I worked actively to damage your reputation. I did this because I was jealous. Jealous of your quiet confidence, jealous of how you seemed unbothered by the challenges we all faced. Now I understand why. You weren't competing with us. You were operating on a level I can't even comprehend. I'm sorry. I know that's inadequate. I know words can't undo what I did, but for whatever it's worth, I'm sorry. You are everything I aspire to be, and I failed to see it. If you're willing, I would like to learn from you. Not flying, I know I'll never match your skill there, but how to serve with honor and humility. How to be a warrior who doesn't need recognition. How to be like you. Respectfully, Lieutenant Ivy Fletcher." Amber read it twice. Then she hit reply and typed a single line. "Report to Joint Base Anacostia Bowling tomorrow at 0800 hours. Bring a notebook. We'll talk." She sent it before she could second-guess herself. Ivy had made mistakes, but she'd also shown the courage to acknowledge them. That was worth something. Now, Amber's story raises an important question. What happens to your family if you're in a high-risk profession? Specialized life insurance policies for military personnel, pilots, and first responders offer coverage that standard policies won't touch. These plans account for combat deployments, hazardous duty assignments, and classified operations, situations where conventional insurance companies deny claims. With premium protection ratios designed specifically for tactical professionals, your beneficiaries receive full payouts regardless of mission classification levels. It's not about expecting the worst. It's about ensuring your sacrifice protects those you love, no matter what happens in the line of duty. The next morning, Amber was awakened at 05:30 by pounding on her door. She answered in PT gear, expecting a morning run. Instead, she found Major Liam Foster standing in the hallway, dressed in his flight suit. "Ma'am," he said formally, "I'm requesting permission to join Ghost Unit." Amber blinked. "How do you even know about Ghost Unit?" "I don't, not officially, but I heard rumors at Bagram before they shipped me stateside for debrief. A unit that doesn't exist, flying missions that never happened, doing the impossible. That's where you're going, isn't it?" I can't confirm or deny. I don't need confirmation. I just need a chance. I'm a good pilot, ma'am. Top 5% in my training class, 800 hours in the F-22. Combat experience in Syria and Libya. I mocked you at Bagram because I'm an idiot who judges people by their cover instead of their actions. Let me make it right. Let me prove I can be better. Amber studied him. Foster was cocky, but that could be channeled into confidence. He had the flight hours and the combat experience. More importantly, he had the humility to admit his mistakes and ask for redemption. I'll forward your request to Vice Admiral Norbert, she said. No promises. That's all I ask, ma'am. Thank you. He saluted and left. Amber watched him go, then checked her watch. She had 2 hours before Ivy Fletcher arrived. Time to get cleaned up and figure out what she was going to say to the woman who had spent 3 weeks sabotaging her reputation. At 0800 exactly, Ivy appeared at Amber's door. She was in her Class A uniform, looking nervous. Amber invited her in, gestured to a chair. You wanted to learn, Amber said without preamble. So, let's start with the basics. Why did you undermine me? Ivy swallowed hard. Honestly, because I was afraid. Afraid that if you succeeded, it would make me look bad by comparison. Afraid that command would see you as the future of female pilots and I'd become irrelevant. It was selfish. It was wrong. And I'm ashamed of it. Good, you should be ashamed. But shame alone doesn't fix anything. What are you going to do differently? I don't know. That's why I'm here, to learn. Amber leaned forward. Here's what I've learned in 3 years of classified operations. The mission is everything. Not your ego, not your reputation, not your career advancement. When you're in that cockpit, all that matters is bringing everyone home alive. Everything else is noise. But how do you do that? How do you shut off the part of your brain that cares about recognition? You don't shut it off. You redirect it. Instead of seeking recognition for yourself, you find satisfaction in knowing you did the job right. When those 267 SEALs went home to their families, that's the recognition that matters, not a press conference, not a medal ceremony. The knowledge that you made a difference. Ivy nodded slowly, absorbing this. Can I ask you something personal? You can ask, I might not answer. That tattoo, the one Major Bradley exposed, was it real or part of a cover like they're saying? Amber was quiet for a moment. Then she stood up, walked to the window, and unbuttoned the top 3 buttons of her uniform shirt. She pulled the fabric aside, revealing her right shoulder completely. The tattoo was elaborate. The VMVA 121 Green Knight Squadron emblem dominated, a medieval knight on horseback, sword raised. Below it, in precise script, RRAQQA 2017, and beneath that, 89 small hash marks, each representing a combat mission. At the bottom, in Arabic script, a phrase, Al-Hars Samit. What does the Arabic mean? Ivy whispered. The silent guardian. That's what the Syrian civilians called me. They never saw my face, never knew my name, but they knew someone was protecting them from above. Someone who struck with precision, who never missed, who brought justice from the sky. Ivy's eyes were wet. 89 missions, in 6 months. 89 missions where one mistake would have meant American deaths. I was 24 years old, barely older than the Marines I was protecting. Every night I'd land, debrief, sleep for 4 hours, and launch again, for 6 months straight. By the end, I was so exhausted I could barely walk, but I never missed, not once. How? How did you stay perfect under that pressure? Amber buttoned her shirt back up, turned to face Ivy. Because I had to. There's no secret technique, no special training, just the absolute refusal to fail. When lives depend on you, perfection isn't optional, it's mandatory. A knock interrupted them. Master Sergeant Raymond stood in the doorway, looking uncomfortable. Ma'am, sorry to interrupt, but there's a situation at Bagram. Colonel Kingsley is asking for you specifically. Amber checked her watch. I'm not officially assigned to Bagram anymore. Why does he need me? Captain Blake Anderson, ma'am. The officer who sabotaged your aircraft. He's requesting to make a statement before his court-martial. He's refusing to talk to anyone except you. Amber and Ivy exchanged glances. Set up a video call, Amber said. I'll speak with him. 10 minutes later, Amber was staring at a screen showing Captain Blake Anderson's face. He looked like he'd aged 10 years and 24 hours. Dark circles under his eyes, unshaven, shoulders slumped in defeat. Lieutenant Hayes, he began, his voice hoarse. Thank you for taking this call. What do you want, Captain? I want to tell you why I did it, not as an excuse. There is no excuse, but I think you deserve to understand. Amber waited. Blake continued. 8 years ago, I lost my younger brother. He was a Marine, deployed to Helmand Province. His unit called for air support. The pilot who responded was inexperienced. Made a mistake. Dropped ordnance 200 meters off target. My brother and 4 other Marines died. Amber's expression didn't change, but something shifted behind her eyes. When I saw you volunteer for that mission, Blake said, all I could see was that pilot who killed my brother. Young, eager, overconfident. I couldn't let it happen again. So I sabotaged your aircraft, thinking I was preventing another tragedy. But I was wrong. Completely, catastrophically wrong. You weren't that pilot. You're nothing like that pilot. And because of my prejudice, I almost caused the exact tragedy I was trying to prevent. Captain Anderson, Amber said quietly, I'm sorry about your brother. That's a loss no one should have to bear. But your pain doesn't justify what you did. You attempted to cause the deaths of 267 Americans because you couldn't see past your own trauma. I know. That's why I'm pleading guilty to all charges. I deserve whatever punishment comes. But before they send me to prison, I needed to tell you this. You're the finest pilot I've ever seen. My brother would be alive today if someone like you had been on station. And those 267 SEALs are alive because you're exactly who you are. So, thank you, and I'm sorry. The screen went black. Amber sat motionless for a long moment. Ivy, who'd watched the whole exchange, spoke hesitantly. Are you going to testify at his court-martial? Yes. I'm going to tell them what he just told me. He deserves to face consequences, but he also deserves to be understood. The military justice system can account for both. That's mercy, ma'am. No, that's justice. Mercy would be letting him off. Justice is acknowledging his pain while still holding him accountable. A message appeared on Amber's phone. Vice Admiral Norbert. Mission moved up. Wheels up in 6 hours. Get to Al Udeid immediately. Amber stood, grabbed her flight bag. Lieutenant Fletcher, I need you to do something for me. Anything, ma'am. There's going to be a lot of media attention over the next few days. Reporters will try to dig into my background, find people I've served with, build a story. I need you to run interference, redirect them, feed them the approved narrative. Can you do that? Absolutely. What's the approved narrative? Young pilot with more experience than her file indicated, made a courageous decision, saved American lives. Nothing about classified programs, nothing about Ghost Unit, nothing about the other 89 missions. Just a simple hero story. Consider it done, ma'am. Amber was out the door and heading to Andrews Air Force Base within the hour. A C-17 waited on the tarmac, engines running. The 5 other Ghost Unit pilots were already aboard. Amber climbed in, strapped into a seat, and the aircraft thundered into the sky. 12 hours later, they landed at Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar. The temperature was 112 degrees Fahrenheit, the air shimmering with heat. 6 F-35s sat in hardened shelters, already prepped for the mission. Weapons loaded, GBU-54 precision-guided bombs, AIM-9X air-to-air missiles for self-defense, full cannon ammunition. The final briefing took place in a secure tent. A CIA officer provided updated intelligence. Hostages confirmed alive as of 0900 this morning, but we've intercepted communications indicating execution is planned for dawn tomorrow. That gives you a 12-hour window. Amber studied the satellite imagery one final time. She'd memorized every detail, building layouts, guard positions, civilian structures. This mission was going to be a razor's edge. One mistake and innocent people died. Final equipment check in 30 minutes, she told her team. We launch at 2200 local. Time on target 0200. Questions? Spectre 1 raised her hand. Rules of engagement? Weapons tight. We shoot only confirmed hostile targets. If there's any doubt, you hold fire. I'd rather abort the mission than kill a civilian. And if we take fire, then we return fire with prejudice. But stay smart. These ISIS fighters want us to make mistakes. Don't give them the satisfaction. The pilots dispersed to prep their aircraft. Amber walked the flight line alone, running through the mission in her mind. 6 aircraft against 400 enemy fighters. Civilians everywhere, hostages whose lives hung by a thread. This was why Ghost Unit existed. This was what they'd trained for. At 2200 hours exactly, 6 F-35s lit their afterburners and roared into the night sky. They climbed to 40,000 feet, configured their stealth systems, and disappeared from every radar in the Middle East. As far as the world knew, the sky was empty. As far as ISIS was concerned, they were safe. They were about to learn otherwise. The flight to the target took 106 minutes. Amber led the formation, with Reaper 9 on her wing. Phantom 2 and Shadow 6 were 10 miles south. Wraith 4 and Spectre 1 were 15 miles east. They communicated through encrypted data links, radio silence absolute. At 0155, they reached the target area. Amber activated her AN/APG-85 radar, the same system she'd used over Kunar Valley. The display lit up with three-dimensional clarity, 463 enemy fighters in the area, 21 armored vehicles, and in the center of the compound, 15 heat signatures clustered in a small room, the hostages. All Ghost elements, this is Ghost 7, stand by for terminal attack sequence. Execute on my mark. 5 acknowledgements came back through the data link. Amber rolled her F35 inverted, pulled the nose down, and began her dive. The ground rushed up toward her, 8,000 feet, 7,000, 6,000. At 3,000 feet, she rolled upright, selected her first target, an armored personnel carrier positioned to block the main road. She pressed the weapons release. The GBU-54 separated, guided itself to the target, and impacted with surgical precision. The vehicle exploded. Chaos erupted on the ground. ISIS fighters scattered, firing wildly into the sky. But they couldn't see the F-35s, couldn't hear them, couldn't target them. They were fighting ghosts. Amber's second bomb eliminated a guard tower. Her third took out an ammunition depot. Reaper 9 was hitting targets on the compound's north side. Phantom 2 and Shadow 6 destroyed all 21 armored vehicles in 90 seconds. Wraith 4 jammed enemy communications. Spectre 1 blinded their radar. In 6 minutes, Ghost Unit had reduced 463 enemy fighters to a confused mob with no command, no heavy weapons, no way to coordinate. The compound was wide open. Delta Force crossed the border. Amber circled overhead, watching the ground team's progress through her sensors. The hostages were extracted in 4 minutes, carried out on stretchers, loaded into armored vehicles, driven at high speed toward the Iraqi border. ISIS fighters tried to pursue. Amber dropped 2 more bombs, cutting off the pursuit routes. By 0230, the hostages were safe in Iraqi territory. Ghost Unit turned for home. Mission success, Amber transmitted. All aircraft returned to base. They landed at Al-Udeid as the sun was rising. Ground crews swarmed the F-35s, counting weapons expended, checking for battle damage. There was none. Ghost Unit had executed a perfect mission against overwhelming odds and hadn't suffered so much as a scratched paint. Vice Admiral Norbert was waiting in the debrief room. "Outstanding work," he said simply. "You just pulled off one of the most difficult hostage rescues in special operations history. The President will be briefed this morning. Expect commendations." Amber shook her head. "No commendations, sir. This is classified. We don't exist, remember? The mission is classified, but the Joint Chiefs can still recognize your achievement in a closed session. With respect, sir, I don't need recognition. I need my next assignment." Norbert smiled. "You sound like your father." Amber froze. "Excuse me, sir? Your father, Colonel Richard Hayes, F-4 Phantom pilot, killed in action during Operation Desert Storm, 1991. You were 3 years old. You knew my father? I flew with him. He was my squadron commander. Best pilot I ever saw, until you. He had the same attitude, mission first, recognition never. He'd be proud of what you've become." Amber felt something crack in her chest. She'd spent 24 years wondering about her father, knowing only that he'd died in combat. Now, she learned he had been exactly like her. A warrior who served in the shadows, who never sought glory, who lived for the mission. Did he... Amber's voice was rough. Did he fly classified missions too? Norbert's expression became guarded. Some of his assignments remain classified to this day. Let's leave it at that. Was he part of Ghost Unit? Ghost Unit didn't exist in 1991, but there were predecessor programs that did similar work, Amber understood. Her father had been a ghost too. She'd inherited more than his flying ability. She'd inherited his calling. "Thank you for telling me, sir. You earned the truth. Now get some rest. You've got another mission briefing in 72 hours. That was insane, but here's what nobody's talking about. This isn't the only story like this. There are more missions, more secrets, more warriors hiding in plain sight. If you want to hear what happened to the other Ghost Unit pilots, check out the next video in the description. And if this story gave you chills, share it with someone who needs to see this. The flight back to Andrews Air Force Base was quiet. Amber sat alone in the back of the C-17, processing everything that had happened. In 48 hours, she'd gone from serving coffee to commanding the most elite aviation unit in American history. She'd saved 267 SEALs and 15 hostages. She'd revealed her identity to dozens of people. She'd been offered recognition and turned it down. And she'd learned that her father had walked this same path 24 years earlier. The C-17 landed at 0800. A staff car waited to take her back to her temporary quarters. But instead of going there, she asked the driver to take her to Arlington National Cemetery. She walked through the rows of white headstones until she found the one she was looking for. Section 60, Row F, stone number 37. Colonel Richard Hayes, United States Air Force, 1955, 1991. Killed in action, Operation Desert Storm, loving husband and father. Amber stood at the grave for a long time. She'd visited before, of course, every time she was in D.C., but this time was different. This time she understood what his sacrifice had meant. He'd been a ghost, just like her, dying in a mission that probably remained classified, serving in the shadows so others could live in the light. "I'm doing what you did," she said quietly. "Flying missions that don't exist, saving people who will never know my name. I understand now why you couldn't tell Mom about your work, why you disappeared for months at a time. You were protecting us, protecting everyone." The wind rustled through the cemetery trees. Amber saluted her father's grave, held it for 10 seconds, then lowered her hand. When she returned to her quarters, she found an envelope slipped under her door. Inside was a handwritten note on Pentagon letterhead. "Lieutenant Hayes, your performance over the past 48 hours has been extraordinary. However, we need to discuss the consequences of your actions at Bagram. You revealed classified systems. You exposed your identity. You violated operational security protocols. These violations, while understandable given the circumstances, cannot go unaddressed. Report to my office tomorrow at 0900 for disciplinary review. Admiral W. Hutchins, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs." Amber read it twice. So, this was how it ended. She'd saved 267 lives, executed a perfect hostage rescue, and now she was being called to account for breaking the rules. Fair enough. She'd known the risks when she volunteered for the Kunar Valley mission. Time to face the consequences. The next morning, she presented herself at Admiral Hutchins's office, exactly on time. His secretary waved her through. Amber entered, came to attention. "Lieutenant Hayes, reporting as ordered, sir." Hutchins looked up from his desk. "At ease. Sit down." Amber sat, her back straight, hands folded in her lap. She was ready for whatever came next. Reprimand, demotion, removal from command. She'd accept it all without complaint. Hutchins pulled out a folder. "Let's start with the charges. Unauthorized use of classified weapons systems. Breach of operational security. Revealing classified information to personnel without appropriate clearance. Disobeying orders from a superior officer. How do you plead? Guilty to all charges, sir? Just like that? No attempt to justify your actions? My actions don't need justification, sir. They were necessary, but they were also violations of regulations. I accept full responsibility." Hutchins nodded slowly. "That's the right answer. Now, let me tell you what's going to happen. You're not being disciplined." Amber blinked. "Sir, you're being promoted to captain, effective immediately. Your command of Ghost Unit is extended indefinitely. Your security clearance is elevated to Top Secret Sensitive Compartmented Information Special Access Program, the highest classification level that exists. And you're being awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross for your actions in Afghanistan." "Sir, I don't understand." "The rules exist to protect the mission," Hutchins interrupted. "But when the rules conflict with saving American lives, the rules take second place. You made that judgment call at Bagram. You were right. Those 267 SEALs are alive because you prioritized the mission over protocol. That's exactly what we need in Ghost Unit's commander." He slid a small box across the desk. Inside were 2 silver captain's bars. "But sir," Amber protested, "I exposed classified systems. Half of Bagram saw that tattoo. My cover is permanently blown. So, we'll give you a new cover. Here's the story we're releasing. You were part of a classified test program for advanced aircraft systems. Your deployment to Bagram was intentional. We wanted to see how you'd perform under pressure with limited information. When the SEAL team was trapped, you proved the system's work in real combat. The mission was a success. Some details remain classified, but the overall narrative is now public. That's actually brilliant, sir. We have good people in public affairs. Now, about your next assignment. Ghost Unit is moving to an undisclosed location. You'll have full authority over mission selection, personnel assignments, and operational planning. You report directly to me, no one else. Your budget is classified. Your operations are classified. For all practical purposes, you don't exist. What about the hostage rescue in Syria? Never happened. The hostages were rescued by Kurdish forces. That's the official story. Ghost Unit's involvement remains completely classified. Amber absorbed all of this. So, I'm a ghost permanently now. No public life, no recognition, just the mission. That's correct. Can you live with that? Yes, sir. That's what I've always wanted. Hutchins stood, extended his hand. Then welcome to your new life, Captain Hayes. Or should I say, Ghost 7. Amber shook his hand, feeling the weight of what she'd just accepted. This was it. This was her future. Not flying air shows or giving press conferences or becoming a general someday. Just mission after mission, year after year, saving lives in the shadows. It was exactly what she'd been born to do. After missions like this, legal battles often follow. When classified operations go public, veterans need attorneys who understand military law, security clearances, and congressional oversight. Specialized legal consultation services for service members handle everything from wrongful discharge, appeals to do Medal of Honor nominations, VA disability claims tied to secret operations, and even congressional testimony preparation. These aren't civilian lawyers. They're former JAG officers and military legal experts who know how to navigate the intersection of classified information and legal rights. Your service was extraordinary. Your legal representation should be too. Over the next 6 weeks, the consequences of Amber's actions rippled outward in ways she could never have predicted. 6-layer consequences. Layer 1, immediate scene consequences. Captain Blake Anderson's court-martial ended with a dishonorable discharge and 2 years in military prison. But Amber testified on his behalf, explaining his motivation. The sentence was later reduced to 1 year, and Blake was recommended for psychiatric counseling to address his unresolved trauma. He sent Amber a letter from prison. Thank you for showing me what mercy looks like. Layer 2, personal ripple effects. Lieutenant Ivy Fletcher received orders transferring her to Ghost Unit's support staff. She wouldn't fly missions, but she'd provide intelligence analysis and operational planning. It was a second chance she hadn't expected. She threw herself into the work with ferocious dedication, determined to prove worthy of Amber's trust. Major Liam Foster's application to Ghost Unit was approved. He became Ghost 8, the 7th pilot in the unit. His first mission was a deep penetration strike into North Korea. He performed flawlessly. When he landed, he found Amber waiting. You were right to mock me at Bagram, she told him. I looked like a trainee. You judged what you saw. Now you know better. Welcome to the team. Layer 3, professional impacts. Colonel Arthur Kingsley received a letter of reprimand for failing to properly utilize a high-value asset under his command, but he also received praise for his handling of the crisis once it became clear what was happening. He was promoted to Brigadier General 6 months later. At his promotion ceremony, he gave a speech about the importance of looking past surface appearances to recognize true capability. Commander Ethan Cassian requested a transfer to test pilot school at Edwards Air Force Base. He wanted to work on the next generation of classified aircraft. If Ghost Unit is flying experimental systems, he said, someone needs to make sure those systems work. Might as well be me. He was accepted. Layer 4. Community transformation. Bagram Airfield created a new recognition program, the Hayes Award for Courage Under Fire. It was given annually to a service member who demonstrated exceptional bravery in the face of overwhelming odds. The first recipient was Master Sergeant Raymond Carter for his actions in repairing Amber's sabotaged aircraft. The base's wall of heroes was updated. Amber's official photograph was placed between Chuck Yeager and Robin Olds, 2 of aviation's greatest legends. Underneath her photo, a single line, Ghost 7, she flew into hell and brought everyone home. Layer 5, Institutional Changes. The Pentagon announced sweeping reforms to pilot evaluation protocols. Combat effectiveness would now be weighted more heavily than time in service. Special access clearances would be more strictly compartmented. And most importantly, the coffee duty practice of assigning junior officers to menial tasks was officially discontinued. The AN/APG-85 radar system entered full production. Dr. Chloe Jasper, the engineer who designed it, was promoted to head of the entire DARPA Aerospace Division. She gave a classified presentation to Congress demonstrating how Amber's combat data had proven the system's viability. Funding was approved for 5 additional experimental aircraft systems. Layer 6, Legacy Setup. Airman Logan Fraser applied for pilot training. His application cited Lieutenant, now Captain, Amber Hayes as his inspiration. He wrote, "I watched her prepare an F-35 in 12 minutes. I watched her fly into conditions that terrified experienced pilots. I watched her save 267 lives. If that's what it means to be an Air Force pilot, then that's what I want to become." He was accepted to undergraduate pilot training with a recommendation from Admiral Hutchins himself. 3 months after the Kunar Valley rescue, all 267 surviving SEALs gathered at Naval Base Coronado for a classified ceremony. Captain Ryan Archer, one of the team leaders who'd been trapped, presented Ghost Unit with a specially crafted SEAL trident made from melted-down brass from the firefight. It was mounted on a plaque that read, "To Ghost Unit, you are silent guardians. You are watchful protectors. You are the reason we came home. Semper Fidelis." Amber mounted the plaque in Ghost Unit's Classified Operations Center. Every pilot who entered the room would see it and remember why they did this work. 6 months after the Syria hostage rescue, Amber received a package with no return address. Inside were 15 handwritten letters from the aid workers she'd saved. They didn't know her name or her face. They only knew that someone had risked everything to bring them home. One letter stood out. It was from a doctor named Sarah Mitchell. "Dear unknown guardian, I was in that compound for 4 days. They told us we would die at dawn. I made peace with it. I said goodbye to my family and my heart. Then the sky lit up with fire, and we were free. I don't know who you are. I don't know your name. But I want you to know that because of what you did, I got to hold my daughter again. I got to see my husband's face. I got to continue my work helping people. You gave me my life back. I will never forget that. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you." Amber read that letter 3 times. Then she put it in a locked drawer in her desk, next to the challenge coin from Master Sergeant Raymond and the photograph of her father in his flight suit. These were the things worth fighting for. Not medals, not recognition, just the knowledge that somewhere in the world, 15 people were alive because she'd done her job. A year after the Bagram incident, Vice Admiral Norbert called Amber into his office. "I have news," he said. "Your father's classified missions have been partially declassified. Turns out he was part of a predecessor program to Ghost Unit. They didn't have the advanced technology you have, but they operated on the same principles. Classified missions, plausible deniability, no recognition." He handed her a thin folder. "This is everything we can release. It's not much, but I thought you'd want to know." Amber opened the folder. Inside were 3 mission reports, heavily redacted. But she could piece together the basics. Her father had flown deep penetration strikes into Iraq during Desert Storm. He'd provided close air support for Special Forces operations that officially never happened. He'd died covering the extraction of a downed pilot, staying on station until his fuel ran out, ejecting over enemy territory, and being captured. The last line of the report hit her like a hammer. Colonel Hayes was executed by Iraqi forces 36 hours after capture. His body was recovered 2 weeks later, posthumously awarded the Air Force Cross. Amber closed the folder, her hands shaking. Her father had died doing exactly what she did every day, putting the mission first, no matter the cost. "There's one more thing," Norbert said quietly. He pulled out a small wooden box, placed it on the desk. "Your father's Air Force Cross. Your mother received it at a classified ceremony. When she passed away 2 years ago, she requested it be given to you when you were ready. I think you're ready now." Amber opened the box. The metal gleamed, a bronze cross with silver wings. On the back, an inscription, "For Richard. For service beyond measure, for sacrifice beyond words. You are not forgotten." She pinned the medal to her uniform, right above her heart. Her father's sacrifice would always be with her now. He'd be proud of you, Norbert said. I hope so, sir. I'm trying to live up to his example. You already have. You're everything he was, and more. That night, Amber returned to Arlington Cemetery. She stood at her father's grave, wearing his medal, and told him everything. About Ghost Unit, about the missions, about the lives saved, about carrying on his legacy. I understand now, she said, why you couldn't tell us everything. Why you were gone so much. Why you risked everything. You were protecting us, protecting everyone. And now I'm doing the same thing. I'm a ghost, just like you. And I'm proud to follow in your footsteps. The wind whispered through the cemetery trees. Somewhere in the distance, a bugler played taps. Amber saluted her father's grave one final time, then turned and walked away. She had work to do. Missions to fly, lives to save. Ghosts didn't rest. They just kept moving through the darkness, silent guardians watching over those who would never know their names. 2 weeks later, Amber received orders for her next mission. This one was different, bigger, more dangerous. An encrypted phone call woke her at 0300 hours. An unfamiliar voice. This is Overlord. We have a situation. Syria. ISIS remnants have captured 15 aid workers. Intelligence suggests they're planning a public execution in 48 hours. 400 hostiles in the area, plus armor. Conventional rescue is impossible. You're our only option. Amber was already getting dressed. When do we launch? 36 hours? Al Udeid Air Base, full Ghost Unit deployment. Understood. Ghost 7 inbound. She hung up, grabbed her flight bag, and was out the door in 90 seconds. A staff car was already waiting. As they drove through the dark streets toward Andrews Air Force Base, Amber's mind was already planning the mission. 6 aircraft, 400 enemies, 15 innocent lives hanging in the balance. This was why Ghost Unit existed. The C-17 was waiting on the tarmac, engines running. She climbed aboard and found the 5 other Ghost Unit pilots already there. Phantom 2s looked up. Another one? Another one, Amber confirmed. Good, Spectre 1 said with a cold smile. I was getting bored. They flew through the night, crossing the Atlantic, then the Mediterranean, finally landing at Al Udeid as the sun rose over the Persian Gulf. 6 F-35s waited in hardened shelters. Weapons were already loaded. Intelligence packets were ready. Amber briefed the mission in a secure tent. We hit them at 0200 local time. Phantom 2 and Shadow 6 suppress armor. Wraith 4 and Spectre 1 handle electronic warfare. Reaper 9 and I take the compound. Delta Force extracts the hostages. Time on target? Reaper 9 asked. 4 minutes from first bomb to last. Then we disappear before anyone knows we were there. The mission launched 30 hours later. 6 F-35s climbed into the night sky and vanished from every radar in the Middle East. They flew in complete darkness, using only their classified sensor systems to navigate. Over the target, Amber activated her AN/APG-85 radar. The compound appeared in perfect clarity. 8 guard towers, 21 armored vehicles, 463 enemy fighters, and in a small room at the compound's center, 15 heat signatures. The hostages. All elements, execute on my mark. 3, 2, 1, mark. 6 F-35s dove toward the earth. Bombs released with surgical precision. Guard towers exploded. Armor burned. Enemy positions disappeared in precisely targeted blasts. In 6 minutes, Ghost Unit had reduced a fortress into chaos. Delta Force crossed the border, extracted all 15 hostages, and was back in Iraq before ISIS could organize a response. Mission success. 0 casualties. Perfect execution. As Ghost Unit turned for home, Amber allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. This was what she'd been born to do. Not for glory, not for recognition, just for this, the knowledge that 15 more people would see tomorrow because she'd done her job. The F-35s landed at Al Udeid as the sun rose. Ground crews swarmed the aircraft. Admiral Hutchins was waiting in the debrief room. Outstanding work, he said. The President sends his thanks. Tell the President we don't need thanks, Amber replied. We need our next mission. Hutchins smiled. That's what I told him you'd say. Ghost Unit is officially the most successful classified aviation program in history. You've saved over 400 lives in less than a year, and no one outside this room knows you exist. That's how it should be, sir. I agree. Now go get some rest. You've earned it." But Amber didn't rest. She went to the flight line, performed a post-flight inspection on her F35, checked every system, every weapons rack, every sensor. The aircraft that had carried her into danger and brought her home safe deserved that attention. When she finished, she found Logan Fraser waiting. He'd graduated pilot training and been assigned as Ghost Unit's newest member, Ghost 9. "Ma'am," he said nervously, "I just wanted to say thank you for being the example I needed, for showing me what service really means." Amber smiled. "You earned your place here, Logan. Now live up to it." "Yes, ma'am, I will. I promise." As the sun set over the Persian Gulf, Amber stood on the flight line, watching the F-35s being prepared for the next mission. Somewhere in the world, someone would need help. Someone would be in danger. Someone would call for Ghost Unit, and they would answer. Silent, invisible, unstoppable. Her phone buzzed. An encrypted message. "Ghost 7, this is Overlord. New situation developing. Stand by for mission briefing." Amber read the message, then looked up at the stars beginning to appear in the darkening sky. Out there, somewhere, was her next mission. Her next chance to make a difference. Her next opportunity to honor her father's legacy. She typed back a single word. Ready. Because that's what ghosts did. They stayed ready. They stayed sharp. They stayed committed to the mission. Always. The phone buzzed again. This time it was a video call. Amber answered, expecting Admiral Hutchins or Vice Admiral Norbert. Instead, she saw three faces she didn't recognize. Two men, one woman, all wearing civilian clothes, but carrying themselves with military bearing. Behind them, through a window, she could see mountains. "Ghost 7, the woman said. "We've been watching you. We're impressed." "Who is this?" Amber demanded. "We're the Council, the organization that created Ghost Unit 20 years ago. Your father was one of ours. Now you are too." Amber's blood ran cold. The Council? That's not in any briefing I've received. That's because the Council doesn't exist officially. We operate above the Pentagon, above the White House, above every government agency. We identify threats before they become crises. We deploy assets like you to handle problems quietly, and we've decided it's time to bring you fully into the fold. "I report to Admiral Hutchins," Amber said firmly. "Admiral Hutchins reports to us. Everyone reports to us eventually. The question is whether you're ready to understand the full scope of what you've been doing." The call ended abruptly. Amber stared at the blank screen, her mind racing. A shadow organization above the military chain of command? Her father had been part of it? Was Ghost Unit just one piece of a much larger operation? She looked around the base, suddenly seeing everything differently. How many other units like Ghost existed? How many other pilots were flying missions that never happened? How deep did this go? A voice behind her made her jump. Phantom 2 stood there, his expression serious. "So, they finally contacted you," he said quietly. "The Council. You know about them?" "We all do. Every Ghost Unit pilot eventually learns the truth. We're not just military operators. We're part of something bigger, something that's been operating in the shadows since the Cold War." "Why didn't anyone tell me?" "Because you needed to prove yourself first. Needed to show you could handle the mission without knowing the full picture. Now you've proven it. And now they want to expand your role. To what?" Phantom 2 handed her a folder. "Open it when you're alone. But be warned, once you read what's inside, there's no going back. You'll understand everything, and you'll never see the world the same way again." He walked away, leaving Amber holding the folder. It was unmarked, sealed with a security tape that would reveal tampering. Inside was the truth, the full truth about Ghost Unit, about her father, about the mission she'd been flying. Did she want to know? She thought about the 267 SEALs, the 15 hostages, the countless lives saved. Whatever the truth was, it had led to those outcomes, good outcomes. She broke the seal and opened the folder. Inside were 6 photographs. 5 showed faces she didn't recognize. The 6th showed her father in his flight suit, standing next to an F-4 Phantom. Below each photograph was a name and a date. The first 5 names were followed by dates of death, all KIA during various classified operations over the past 30 years. Her father's name was at the bottom, Colonel Richard Hayes, KIA 91, and at the very bottom of the page, a 7th line, blank except for a date, 25. A handwritten note was paperclipped to the page. These were your predecessors. All gave their lives in service to the council. Your father was the finest of them. You have the potential to surpass even him. But know this, the council demands absolute loyalty, absolute sacrifice, absolute commitment. If you cannot give that, walk away now. If you stay, you will do extraordinary things. But you will also face dangers beyond anything you've experienced. The choice is yours. Overlord. Amber read the note 3 times. Then she looked up at the stars. Her father had made this choice 34 years ago. He'd given everything. His time, his safety, ultimately his life. All for missions that no one would ever know about. And he'd thought it was worth it. Was she willing to make the same choice? She thought about the SEALs going home to their families, the hostages reuniting with their loved ones, the lives saved, the darkness pushed back. She took out her phone and typed a single word, in. The response came instantly. Welcome to the Council, Ghost 7. Your real work begins now. Amber closed the folder, slipped it into her flight bag, and walked back toward the operations center. She had a mission briefing in 2 hours. After that, who knew? Maybe another rescue, maybe a strike on high-value targets, maybe something she couldn't even imagine yet. Whatever it was, she'd be ready, because she was Ghost 7, daughter of Richard Hayes, commander of the most elite aviation unit in history, and now, apparently, an agent of an organization that operated in the deepest shadows of the national security apparatus. The phone buzzed one more time. A final message from Overlord. Syria was a test. You passed. North Korea is next. Prepare your team. Wheels up in 72 hours. This mission will make Syria look easy. Good luck, Ghost 7. We're counting on you. Amber read the message, then looked at her F35 sitting in its hardened shelter. North Korea, one of the most heavily defended airspaces in the world. Whatever the mission was, it would be the most dangerous she'd ever flown. Perfect. She smiled, not with fear, but with anticipation. This was why she existed, for the impossible missions, for the moments when everyone else said no and someone had to say yes. She was that someone, and she would bring everyone home, just like always. The sun had fully set now. Stars filled the sky above Al Udeid Air Base. Amber stood alone on the flight line, a solitary figure in a flight suit, looking up at the infinite darkness. Somewhere up there, her next mission waited, her next chance to honor her father's memory. Her next opportunity to prove that ghosts weren't just phantoms, they were guardians, silent guardians, watchful protectors, the reason good people came home safe. She turned and walked toward the operations center. There was work to do, plans to make, missions to fly. The darkness was infinite, but so was her determination. Ghost 7 was ready, always ready.